When the narcissist becomes unmasked. Think about that for a minute. Everyone, if you like the content, please like, subscribe, and share. So, what is unmasking? This is something the narcissist does their best to avoid. You see, they don't want people figuring out who they are, what they had done, what they are doing, or what they're about to do. The person you're considering, they keep multiple secrets. And the secrets they keep are not only from those who are closest to them, but from those people who they encounter every once in a while, and from those people who they haven't even met yet. You see, this person is a shapeshifter. They are a dark energy source, and they slither through life trying to disrupt other people's energy, trying to steal their time, to take their relationships, to destroy their health, to take their money, and to take their purpose. That's not even counting their belief in humanity or that better days will arrive. This person you're thinking about, they A, knew what they were doing, they B, are doing it right now if they're still living, and C, they will never change. They're only going to get worse over time. And when they were unmasked for you, that's when probably the relationship ended, or when you drew the line in the sand, or when you had seen one too many toxic behaviors on their behalf. You see, each and every one of us reaches a threshold. Each and every one of us has only so much we can tolerate. Each and every one of us realizes eventually that something is not changing in these toxic relationships. And what that is, it's the narcissist. You see, this person, what they want to do is have people do things for them. They want to capture people, trap them, trick them, manipulate them, blame them, and punish them in a place which is known as the narcissistic fog. This and the devaluation stage and the trauma bond, all three are unique to themselves, yet interchangeable, and they all equal one word. That word, yes, it's toxicity. Now, you didn't know what toxicity was before you probably found my channel. You probably thought toxicity was a skull and crossbones on an oil drum that says toxic waste, stay away, that kind of thing. I get it. That's what I used to think. Now you're recognizing and realizing that toxicity has 2 feet. It walks and talks like you do. It can shapeshift, it can blame, it can blend in, it can act like it has no idea. It can come from a place of authority. It can have the loudest voice in the room. It can control a room without even saying one word or one syllable. Think about when you're in the relationship with that person. Many times you would be in your house, or let's say that you married the narcissist, or they were a family member, or maybe they were in the boardroom when you were working with them, a coworker, or the workplace bully / narcissistic boss, whoever it is. Many times they didn't even have to say a word. They could just be in the same environment as you. And you knew that the life force of you was being drained from you. You knew you could cut the tension with a butter knife. You knew you could cut the air with a butter knife. You knew that you couldn't wait till it was 5:30 and you could punch out and get out of that workplace. Or you knew that if it was your household that you're going to wait until the sun went down and it was time to go to bed. Or maybe you went out to the store to get away from that person because you couldn't handle it any longer. Or flip it. Maybe they did the same thing. But anyway, you cut it. This person's energy, yes, the narcissist energy, it's pitch black. It is of the low vibrational quality. It is a place that the narcissist exists in, which is that low vibrational quagmire state. You are a beautiful, bright, shining light. As I've shared for years, the narcissist was drawn to you like a moth to a flame, but the narcissist was wearing a mask. They were doing their best to manipulate you and to keep you subservient to them and to keep you trapped in that zombie-like state as long as you would stay there. Now, most people, before they had encountered the person you're considering, they did not figure out what narcissism was. That's because the internet and the smartphones weren't as prevalent. We didn't have the age of information like we have right now. And the collective consciousness was not even close to what it is today, which I will talk about again in a moment. But those people, most of those people, if not all of them, they didn't heal. Now you may say, how would you know that and why would you say it? Well, I would say it because I just told you before the internet wasn't around and the smartphones, the narcissist could only essentially stay in their little neighborhood or maybe a 10 or 20 mile radius, essentially. But now we have the smartphones, so now we're all connected just like that. You can connect with somebody all over the world in a moment's notice. You can video call them, FaceTime them. You can text, email, etc. That's why the narcissist is loaded up these days with supply. Whereas in the past, let's take an older marriage. Maybe there was a couple that you thought were in a toxic relationship that you just figured out recently, and say that couple's been married for 50 years. Let's say the guy is toxic and the female is the enabler or the empath who was just being punished and she was so beaten down. This is an example. Well, now you can look and see what happened there. Why didn't those two break up? How did she stay in it so long? The reason she stayed in it so long, this is a hypothetical illustration, is because, again, as I shared, there was no internet, no smartphone way back then when they met. So she became very loyal to him, and he could flip it. Maybe it was she was the narcissist, he was the empath, however you cut it. But anyway, you look at it, that person was so beaten down and broken down that time has passed, and they don't believe that there are better days ahead. What they don't realize is that there are better days ahead, and it starts when you go no contact. You block that person. You delete them, you remove them and all flying monkeys and people associated with them. Now, if you can't do it today, I get it. You're gonna have to utilize and understand what gray rock is. Gray rock is when you don't share information. You definitely don't overshare, and you don't let the toxic person know what you're thinking, what your plans are, who you're spending time with, or what you're working on. That's gray rock in a nutshell. But until you get to gray rock, you will have to understand many different things. That the narcissist is everywhere, that they do shapeshift, that they will get unmasked over and over and over again, and that they did know what they're doing. Let's go back to you for a moment. When you were in that relationship, how many times did you experience what I termed, and I coined this term years ago, a micro discard? Probably thousands, if not more. What is a micro discard, you may say? Well, it's not the grand finale of the relationship, the ending that ends with a thud, a crash, and a bang, i.e. the discard. A micro discard is when the narcissist is punishing you randomly during any weekday or weekend because that's what they do. Example, let's say today's Thursday. Let's say you had dinner plans with the narcissist tonight. This is in the past, not today, because he should be nowhere near the narcissist, but in the past. Well, Thursday, if they knew you were going to pick them up at 6:30, they could intentionally make you late, so you're sitting in the parking lot until 8 o'clock, you're stewing, you're hungry, the gas is running low because it's freezing cold wherever you are, and you're not in a good mood, and you're waiting for them. What were they doing when you were waiting for them outside in the car? They could have been doing anything. They could have been cheating on somebody with you. They could have been sitting there gathering up supply, watching you freeze your you-know-what off in the cold. They could have been actually working. I doubt it. They could have been recharging their cell phone batteries on one of their 3 smartphones, preparing those up so when they could triangulate you a dinner that you would pay for in a couple hours. Who knows what they were doing, but what they weren't doing was keeping their word and being available at 6:30 when you were supposed to pick them up. There's your micro discard right there. Another one would be this. Let's say, how many times were you hung up on by the narcissist? Probably way more than you can recall. There's a micro discard. How many times did you have to put out, pay bills for the narcissist financially? And side note, pro tip, what does the narcissist love more than money? You should know it by now. That's right, they love your money more than money. Enough with the side note pro tip for this part, but let's say you paid bills for the narcissist. You paid for their Amazon or their gas, or you loaned them money or bought them a present, or loaned them money to get a present, to get yourself something because they didn't want to pay for anything out of their own pocket. They made you gift yourself presents, but they would buy it with your money. See what I'm saying here? And no, there's no script. This is free flowing. This is what happens when you go through the narcissistic abusive cycle. You come out and you heal. You see things crystal clearly. But a micro discard is what you experienced throughout that whole relationship until finally something broke and something gave and something snapped. And that's when the narcissist most likely discarded you and you didn't know what was going on. You were thinking that you could still work on an unworkable relationship or fix an irreparable relationship. But when that mask is ripped off on the behalf of the narcissist, that's it. It's done. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unexperience what you've experienced, and you can't unhear what you've heard. You see, the narcissist, if they did discard you, and if they did, my heart goes out to you, they knew what they were doing. It was strategic, it was intentional, it was deliberate, and it was on purpose. And what it meant was they had taken as much from you as they possibly could, and they deemed that a new supply source was better off suited for them to steal from for a period of time. Now, there are multiple other reasons why that could have happened, but that's what it is in a nutshell for the most part. Having said all these things, when the narcissist becomes unmasked, this is when they can't hold it together much longer. It's when they can't keep the mask on as tight as it used to be. Remember, the narcissist mask, it is consistently, constantly, and always getting looser and looser. When you first met the narcissist, that mask was super glued airtight to their face. You had no idea to believe that they were somebody other than the person they were presenting to you. But as time went by, the narcissist mask was getting weaker and weaker. They couldn't keep it up. They couldn't maintain the stability of that mask on their face. That's why you experienced micro discards. That's why you saw more and more poor behavior on the behalf of the narcissist as time went on, until eventually one day they didn't even wear the mask. And maybe you came home from work one day and your house was cleaned out. Maybe you came home one day from work and you were sitting down and you were taking it easy, yes, on a Thursday night, very similar to tonight, and you had a conversation with somebody who turned out to be the narcissist, and the very next day the moving van's there. I can't tell you what happened with you. What I can tell you is that when the narcissist became unmasked, they had reached their threshold. They couldn't pull off the charade any longer, nor did they want to. But they also knew you were so invested in them and the relationship that you weren't going to go anywhere. They also knew you were so beaten down and broken, caught up in the trauma bond or the narcissistic fog or the devaluation stage, that you didn't have much energy. They also knew your money was going to zero, most likely. Your health perhaps had taken a hit. Your resources were becoming more and more defunct, if you will, like you didn't have as many resources, and you didn't have a support system like you had before. So they knew that you were vulnerable. Not only were you vulnerable, you didn't know what narcissism was, you were naive, and they were waiting for this day to happen. So now again, I'll share this. Does the narcissist know the exact second they're gonna discard somebody? Usually no, at times yes. What they do know is they do know that each and every one of the relationships they encounter or become a part of, they all have an expiration date. Yours was no different. Mine was no different either. Now, having said that, once the narcissist realizes that they don't have to place their own energy that they stole from you into wearing a mask to manipulate you, I hope you play that part again, then they don't do it because they don't have to, because the jig is up, the news is out. You finally saw one too many poor behaviors on the behalf of the narcissist, and they said, I don't care, what are you gonna do about it? This is what they do. That's why no good deed goes unpunished when you're with these toxic parasites. And that's why they know that the clock is ticking, not only for them, but for anybody that they're in a relationship with, because every one of these relationships heads to one place, and that place is called Destructionsville. And it benefits the narcissist, it doesn't benefit you. And you may say, well, how does Destructionsville benefit the narcissist? Think about it. They end the relationship via discard. They've taken everything they can. They don't think you're gonna heal. They don't think you'll figure out what narcissism is. They definitely don't think you'll know what the mask is. And they don't think you'll put yourself back together. On top of that, they know they won't give you closure. They know that you will most likely won't get the answers to the questions you're searching for. However, you are getting the answers to the questions you're searching for because you're here on the community and on the channel. And on top of that, they want to twist the knife as deep in the person as possible by leveraging the new supply to punish the old supply. This is how the cycle goes around and around and around and around in a loop. And in the loop, in the middle of that loop, is the narcissist. And on the outside of the loop are cogs in the wheel of abuse. You were one of the cogs in the wheel of abuse. You were not the abuser, you were the abused. You were not the manipulator, you were being manipulated. You were taken for granted. You were being treated less than a complete stranger. You were being abused, manipulated, hoodwinked, and trapped. Now, having said all those things, when the narcissist becomes unmasked, this many times will happen intentionally on their hands, on the behalf of the narcissist, because they know that when somebody is so broken down or beaten down in the narcissistic fog, they don't have to wear the mask. That is a big pill to swallow, but it's real. Another thing you need to understand here, then I'm going to get ready to close the video, is there are times that you will have in the past had unmasked the narcissist without even knowing it. Here is an example. Let's say that you came home from work one day, or say you lived with the narcissist, you came home from work one day, and the narcissist was in a great mood, incredible mood. And you were trying to take advantage of them being in a good mood. Not take advantage of them, but you're like, oh my gosh, they're in a good mood. I don't know what happened today. I don't really care. I want to make sure that we have a good night or a good day and a half because I know the other shoe's going to drop. These are the kind of things you were doing when you're in that relationship. But remember, you didn't know what narcissism was. So let's say, using this hypothetical example, when you came home and you tested the temperature of the narcissist, you're like, oh my gosh, they're in a great mood. This is going to be good. What are we going to do? Let's just say you got courageous or you got brave. And let's say you said something to them that they did not approve of. Example, very simple example, that a healthy or stable person wouldn't think twice about, but the narcissist can't be questioned. Remember that. Maybe you said to them, hey, you know what? I loaned you that $200, or I gave you that $200 last week. I'm a little bit low on money. You think you could pay me back that $200? I could really use it because I don't get paid for another 8 days, and I could use that money, and you told me you're gonna pay me back. Boom, that's all it takes. Now they're in a bad mood again. Now they have an excuse to punish you, give you the silent treatment, blame you, maybe even throw something at you, or throw your food in the dish, in the bin or whatever, but their mood changes instantly. And there is the narcissist becoming unmasked, and you did it without even knowing it. Think about what I just mentioned to you. What did you do there? You caught them off guard. You asked them a legitimate question. You wanted your funds returned to you because you had no money. They told you they would pay you back. They were in a great mood, probably that had nothing to do with you. Maybe they were cheating on your best friend at work, or maybe they just lathered up a new source of supply and you didn't know about, but they were in a great mood, but it had nothing to do with you, I can assure you that. But you were going to reap the benefits of them being in a good mood, but you didn't realize they were the narcissist, so you asked them politely for the $200 that you loaned them, and believe me, you had probably loaned them 100 different times $200, and you never got paid back one dime. As a matter of fact, you kept loaning them money knowing you would never get it back, but you did whatever you could do to stay in the relationship. But this time you needed the money, so you asked them for that $200 back, and boom, your day or your night is ruined. And that's going to roll into tomorrow, and it's going to roll into the weekend, and here we go again. You see, the petulant child, i.e. the narcissist, couldn't regulate themselves. They didn't want to pay you back, so instead of paying you back or talking about it like an adult, you unmasked them. They couldn't control or contain themselves. They blew up on you. They get supply. Maybe after 20 minutes of them thinking to themselves, wait a minute, the only way to get out of this without actually paying them back is to claim that I have to go see my sister for a couple hours, or give them the silent treatment and slam the door. Then they leave. You're stuck in the house holding the bag, cleaning up the food that they tried to cook, but they're a horrible cook. And now you're texting them, they're not getting back to you. You're calling them, they're not getting back to you. And then you're saying, oh my gosh, if I didn't say anything, I could have had a great night tonight. See how it works? The narcissist was in control from the minute you met them until you figured out what narcissism was. You may think you were in control. You were never in control. The narcissist was steering you and your energy, you and your money, you and your time, you and your focus, you and your relationships, you and your health, your hobbies, your purpose, everything about you. They were steering you. You were the energy source. You were the fuel source, and they knew it. That's why once the narcissist becomes unmasked, when you see it, you can't unsee it, and you don't want to see it again, which is why you need to go no contact and block that person and delete them. But unmasking of the narcissist, this is something that your average human being will never understand. If you said the word, what does it mean to be unmasked, to an average human being who has never been in the narcissistic abusive cycle and definitely doesn't know what narcissism is, what they will most likely tell you is, oh, that's when some trick-or-treater during Halloween takes their mask off. They got unmasked. They took it off because they needed to breathe it. It was too hot for them. Or remember the old days, the Lone Ranger would take off the mask and see who it is. Or, well, that's not how it is in real life. What it is, it's a toxic person, a narcissist, becoming unmasked over and over and over again, but you not knowing what narcissism was, just like I didn't. But once you know it, you know an awful lot about humanity, about mindset, about narcissism, about empathy, about toxicity, and about your energy. So everyone, that's the video. I hope you liked it. I loved doing it from the beautiful Carolinas. This is Andrew. Namaste. Have a great afternoon, evening, or morning. No matter where you are on the planet, you are not alone. I love you all. God bless you, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. And remember, you saw the narcissist become unmasked probably dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of times. You just didn't know what it was. And many times, you actually caused the unmasking or the unhinging of the narcissist unbeknownst to you. This is why when you get the wisdom, you need to apply the tools. This is why when you were in the relationship with the narcissist, like so many billions with a B, billions of people are, and you may say, well, that's a lot of people. Well, it's only a little bit less than 25% of the population. If you think that there are less than 25% of the population in a narcissistic relationship right now, you really need to think again. That number is much higher than that. And you may say, well, wait, where do you get that from? I thought narcissism was only a small amount of people. First of all, nobody really knows. Second of all, when you understand that one narcissist affects dozens, if not hundreds of people's lives every single day, that's how I get to over 2 billion people. But when you wrap your head around that and you realize that you want nothing to do with toxicity, that's when you close the chapter of the book on the narcissist. You let them slither off elsewhere, and you maintain your boundaries, and you heal and heal properly. I love you all, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Bye.